It's an honor for me to be with all of you today, and I really thank you for inviting me. Not only am I going to share my story, but I want to talk in there a little bit about my heritage. And since we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, I thought it would be very appropriate to talk about that, because each of us we have our own heritage, and I think that's something that helps understand who we are and how we see the world. So the other thing, I want to congratulate all the students out there, because you are enrolled in higher education. And I think the degree that you're working on and the one you take with you once you graduate is just the beginning of your journey, as it was for me. My journey, obviously quite interesting, and it was nothing I could ever had imagined when I was young. So, you know, I mean, being a first, it kind of opens possibilities that you've never dreamed of. So, but I also want to share with you some of the lessons and the perspective that I learned during that time, which I feel are very important, and some of the things which helped me overcome my challenges and barriers that I faced along the way. So if you would have met me when I was younger, and my husband would be a witness to this, because when I met him, I was kind of the same. I was quiet, I was shy, and I pretty much kept to myself. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and my parents are from Corozal. It's a little mountain town up in the mountains in Puerto Rico. But my dad, he was an Army career soldier, and his assignments took us all the way around the world. And I'm literally saying that, around the world, because the places where we lived are not touristy places. These are places that you wouldn't say, well, let me see where I'm going to be traveling today. That would not be on the list. You know, it's not France, it's not Italy, or any place like that. So I think that experience kind of added to my resilience. One thing I do want to say about my father, I really admired him. He was in the latter part of World War II. My dad's going to be 95 years old in November. And he was in the Korean War. And he was actually in the only all Hispanic US Army regiment in the US Army. And we were fortunate for my dad to still be alive, to be there when the Congress awarded the regiment the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor just a few years ago. So I just wanted to interject that, because to me, my dad was my role model. I mean, I looked up to him in most everything. But the traveling that we did, my experiences with different cultures, the languages, the people, it taught me a lot about respect, because as human beings, we are quite the same. Our wants, our needs, you know, even though our beliefs and our traditions may be different, I really feel that with respect, we can all get along despite those differences. So seeing myself growing up around the world, I now consider myself a world citizen. When I have the opportunity to travel, which I love to do, not only because of the job that I had as a commercial airline pilot, but just as a traveler, that's how I see myself. I don't consider myself a tourist in any place I visit. I go there, I want to understand the people, you know, see how they live, and kind of experience it with them if I have that opportunity. So, like I said, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's about an awareness of the Hispanic culture. You know, I mean, there's so many countries which have a Hispanic culture that, as a Latina, I eventually learned about my heritage and came to embrace it, which I didn't grow up with it, so I didn't learn about it until much later. Now, Spanish was my first language, which we spoke at home, but I didn't learn to read or write it until we moved to South America. We lived in Paraguay, and this was the first Latin culture that I experienced and I learned about, other than, you know, the other countries where we lived. But the little experience I had when we would go back to Puerto Rico, we were just visiting. So we'd pass through, once my father would receive an assignment, we'd go back home, visit the family, and then move on to our next country and assignment. So Paraguay is the only landlocked country in South America. So I'll let you look that up, and many of you may already know that, but I know that English is the universal language, but Spanish is spoken in more countries than any other, even though they say Chinese is spoken by more people. But I think Spanish is spoken in so many more countries than we can really comprehend. So I was able to learn about Paraguay's music, traditional costumes, and their dances, and that's where I really learned how to read and write Spanish. And I was able to practice it outside my house, where we spoke it at home. Basically, it's like my parents spoke to me in Spanish and I answered back in English, but I still understood it, but was able to practice it then. So when my father retired after the assignment to Paraguay, we moved back to Puerto Rico. I was 15 years old and kind of happy to finally figure out that my dad's retired. We're going to be staying in one place because we'd move every 2 to 3 years. And so I was happy that we were settling down and we were going to be close to family. But believe it or not, it was kind of a culture shock for me. You know, it took a while to adjust, because one thing's living, visiting family, and the other thing is living close to family. And some of you may kind of understand that. But I attended a high school, and I was glad that I learned to read and write Spanish, because everything was in Spanish, even though our textbooks were in English. But I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity to learn it enough to be able to use it, because I went to Department of Defense schools, and all those schools gave me enough credits to graduate high school when I was 16 years old. So I had one more year in high school and I graduated. So what do you do at 16? The only option you have is to go to college. So I enrolled in the University of Puerto Rico, and I knew that I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps as a military professional career. I knew I didn't want the Army, and I wanted to join the Air Force. So I learned about the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, ROTC, in college. And I also wanted to get my degree in math. I love math. That was one of my, I'm not great at science, but I did love math, and that's the degree I wanted. And I figured if I could go into ROTC and get my commission with my degree, then it would be helpful for me to, you know, use that degree in some capacity for the US Air Force. Well, unbeknownst to me, when I applied, women were not accepted into that program. It was only for men. Actually, the commander, when I approached, I told him that I wanted to be a cadet. He kind of sent me over to the sorority that supported the cadets. And I finally explained to him that that's not what I wanted. I wanted to wear the uniform. But that didn't happen. So plan B, you know, if you have a plan A, at least you can have a plan B. So I looked at what I was going to do after college. And I decided that a business degree was going to open some doors for me to find job opportunities. But I still did my minor in math. So I still kind of followed that and did my minor in math. And one thing I learned living in so many different places, I learned how to adapt. So I knew that if we weren't happy, or if I wasn't happy where we were living or what was happening, I knew it wasn't forever. I knew that tomorrow would bring something new, or the next week, or in 2 years we'd be moving. So no problem. So we made the best of what we had and where we were. So that's how I learned to adapt, and that's how I came up with Plan B. You move on, you do what you have to do. So I continued my studies, and in my last year of college, the summer before my last year, I found a full-time job. And I decided that I was going to be able to work full-time and take my last few credits at night. And I went to work for Puerto Rico International Airlines. It's called Prinair. At that time, it was the largest commuter airline in the world, and it served the Caribbean for the most part. And not only did I get a full-time job, but that's where I met my future husband. And we got married 3 months later. It's not for everybody, but we've been married over 46 years now. And just a side note, relationships take a lot of work. And, to be together for 46 years, we both put in a lot of work to make this relationship last this long, and especially everything that we went through. So, but I got married. I still had a few classes at night, and my mom would call me at work, and she would say, "Hi, Mija, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "Hi, Mom, what's up?" And she would say, "Just calling to see how you're doing." Okay. And then she'd ask me, "Are you going to class tonight?" She was a very smart lady. She is still alive. And she wanted to make sure that I was going to go to class, that I was going to finish my courses in order to finish my degree and get that piece of paper and get my degree, because she knew how important that was. And it wasn't that I wasn't going to go, but she just wanted to add that extra push for me, because when you're that young, and I was 21 years old and married and a full-time job, and you think, well, I've got it. I've got a full-time job. I got a husband. I'm set. What am I going to need this for? But she knew how important it was. And I did too. Because in the back of my mind, I was still considering being able to go into the military, into the Air Force. And I knew I needed that degree in order to become an officer. So I made sure that I finished my classes. So my husband worked at the airline also. And after a couple of years, he and I started talking. And he said, well, what about if we join the military, join the Air Force? And I was all excited about that. So we decided that that's something that we could do. We could do it together. He had 1 more year of college to finish. So he was working full time, and he kind of dropped out of school. But he knew that he could enlist and, get some educational benefits and finish his degree. And with my degree, I figured, well, let's try and do this. But even though he and I scored the highest on the entrance exam, the recruiter did not offer me an officer position at all. So I was denied that opportunity again. So I figured they accepted my husband. He was going to enlist. And I figured that my serving in the military was going to be as a military spouse. And I said, okay, Plan B again. So off we went. And he got his assignments, and I followed him around. So we went to Colorado and then to Arkansas, and then we ended up in the Canal Zone. And that's something that helped me understand how the military worked, and especially the Air Force. So his assignments kind of opened up a better understanding, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, because every time he'd move, I'd have to quit my job and start over again. So I worked at a bank, I worked for a law firm, so many jobs, and I figured I need a profession. I need to figure out what I need to do to be able to work and make a career out of it. So I applied for a Department of Defense job, DOD, down in the Canal Zone. And I got the position, and I actually worked at the air terminal. So that's where all the aircraft would come in and the pilots would go in and out. And my husband was also in airport control, you know. So he kind of controlled the flight plans and the airfield. So it was very similar. We kind of worked 2 buildings apart in the Canal Zone. But it was one summer while we were there that they had an open house. And this is a big piece of advice that I want to share with you. That when you're open to opportunities, being open to opportunities, it kind of helps determine the possibilities, because you never know when that's going to happen. So you have to be open to that, you know. If you're trying to achieve something, I encourage you to tell anyone willing to listen, because you never know if they or someone they know will help you, whether it's immediate or down the road. When something comes up and they remember your words, they go, oh yeah, I remember so-and-so. They were trying to do this. Let me see, get their number, or so they'll remember you. So you just have to put it out there. You have to put it out there. So during this open house in the Canal Zone that summer, they had a little table with some pamphlets, and there was an Air Force officer dressed in a flight suit. And working on the flight line, I recognized that. And I went over to see exactly what the table was all about. So he was explaining to me that the Air Force had just opened up an opportunity for females to go into the pilot profession. So they were looking for female pilot candidates for the Air Force. I was open to the opportunity, and I saw my possibility. That was my moment. And I don't know if, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, if you've ever had a moment where you're focused and determined, then you understand. Because at that moment, you're able to harness energy and the power to see your goal and to kind of visualize what needs to happen to get there. And that's exactly what it takes. Focus and determination. And it comes, I think, from passion and the motivation to pursue a goal and a dream. And I knew this was my third and last try, and I was going to have to give it everything I had. And I wasn't going to let anybody tell me or deny me the opportunity. For 2 reasons. I was a DOD employee, and the good thing was that I had access to all the regulations and could really see what I could and could not do and what I needed to do in order to apply and have that opportunity to be considered. Now, the second thing is that I needed to make sure that my package was solid. So I talked to my husband, and he was very supportive. So remember, I was married, and by that time we had a 3.5-year-old daughter. So I knew that this wasn't going to be easy, and this is something that, like I said, you know, you work hard at relationships, and I know that this opportunity was going to be something that we had to work on together. And him being so supportive was the best thing, you know. Now, my father was kind of on the fence, you know, he wasn't sure about this opportunity in the Air Force to become a pilot. My mother was totally against it. I mean, she didn't understand. And sometimes when people close to you kind of not support you, and it's probably because they don't understand what you're trying to do, or it's something different, or they're afraid for you, they're afraid of your failure or the consequences of that decision. So it's not that they don't love you, it's just that they're just afraid for you. So, but having this opportunity, I looking back at, I understood this, that sometimes denial, you know, those 2 denials that I had before, doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. It's just a delay, you know. It may not have been the right opportunity, or you just needed to get more experience, whether it's professionally or personally, or sometimes it's just a test of how much you really want something. But when the right time and the opportunity comes, you know, you'll definitely know. But there are always challenges and obstacles, and besides those challenges and of, you know, courses, training, hard work, whatever it is, everybody encounters that, no matter what the goal is. But the biggest obstacle out there, and everybody faces this, is yourself. You know, we are our worst enemy because of our doubt and because of our fear. The fear of the failure, the fear of the challenge, and the fear of change. A lot needed to happen, you know. And doubt always limits your potential. And don't forget that. So you need to overcome that, you know. And I understand my mom was very doubtful because of the fear of the unknown. But besides the challenges and obstacles ahead of me, there was one thing that I had right in front of me, and it was my age. The cutoff age for a pilot in pilot training was 26.5 years old. And my birthday was coming up in a few months, and I still had to do the whole package, turn it in, and get accepted. So when I got my telegram saying that I had been accepted into the program, I had just turned 26 years of age. So there were several programs that I had to go through. I had to go to the pilot screening program to see if I had the aptitude and determination to become an Air Force pilot. Once I passed that course, you know, flight screening was challenging. It was ground school, learning the aircraft, basic aerodynamics, emergency procedures, and how to fly and eventually solo the airplane. And that took about 6 weeks. And, you know, when you face challenges like that, you kind of reach deeper than you've ever thought you could, and you find that strength and determination to make it happen. And we all have that. We all have that. It's how you find that strength to work your way through those challenges. And I was able to do that. And I couldn't let any setbacks happen, because then I would miss my deadline to go into a pilot training before my 26.5-year birthday. But then not only are there challenges, but there's people who are trying to deviate your progress. And sometimes you can sidestep and go on, but sometimes you just have to work through those challenges and stay on the course and do the best you can. Now, you've heard of the term having a high IQ, but you need to understand there's a thing called an EQ, and I think it plays as much as a role as your IQ. You know, your intellectual intelligence plays a part of the role for your success, but your emotional intelligence, I feel, is just as big of a factor, and sometimes even more. If your success was gifted to you instead of working hard for it, I don't think you would appreciate it enough to keep it, because it will probably be gone as fast as it came. In the end, I think that the reward for working through each challenges that you have is greater than just being easily overcome, because it helps you dig in and be more determined and work harder. Plus, you'll appreciate it more because of the hard work you put into it. At the time, you won't think that, but later on, you'll understand that you learned something from each of those. Every once in a while, I would think about the monumental challenge ahead of me, you know, but I had to take it one day at a time and focus of what was right in front of me. So besides the challenges of the training programs, I had to deal with barriers and roadblocks from the people who did not want and could not accept the fact that women were in the program. Obviously, it was a male-dominated profession, and you know, it's something that they couldn't understand why women were in this program. But, you know, you'll always find people who will try to discourage you because of envy or resentment or whatever their problem is. But you need to find and surround yourself with people that support you, even though they don't understand what you're trying to achieve. And like my mom, she was kind of discouraging me not to do this. But you know, your friends may think that they're going to lose your friendship, or your family, you know, you're going to step away from them. But these situations of people who tried to roadblock and discourage me from continuing that weren't my family taught me that it was never about me. It was always about them. So I learned to recognize that, and I saw that that it was a personal problem for them, and it was not my problem. As long as it didn't affect where I was going or what I was trying to do, and I could kind of work around it, I just kept clear. And because in my mind, I knew who I was and what I was doing and where I was going. So I kept that very clear in my mind. Becoming successful in this male-dominated profession, I had to overcome self-doubt. And luckily, I always saw myself as an equal. And I guess I was very comfortable in my own skin. You know, I was very grounded. Now, managing training and family was also challenging, but I developed a work-life balance because I had to, and I wanted to make it work. I worked as hard on, like I said, my relationship as I did as what I was trying to achieve professionally. So the problem was that I didn't have any role models to lean on and ask for advice, and how did you do it, and what do you think? And so pretty much I had to figure this out on my own, and with the help of my husband. You know, we worked through things, very supportive, and I'm so blessed with that. But one thing I learned, I was never afraid to ask for help anytime I needed it. I sought out my mentors. So you'll be surprised how many people are willing to help you. But if they don't know, and if you don't ask, you know, you'll never have a mentor. So it behooves you to go out and find a mentor and ask for help. Don't be afraid. So, and change is hard. Change is hard, and I understand that. But I want to read you this quote that I have, and I think hopefully you'll understand that. And it's, if you ever want to dream and achieve something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. If you keep doing the same things, you will get the same results. So when you change your way of thinking and change your actions, you will get different results. So that's one way to look at change. And you have to change. You know, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. So working through that, I was very challenged, you know, and pilot training was hard, very hard. But when I got to advanced pilot training, oh, and by the way, I went to flight screening, officer training school, and I got to undergraduate pilot training with a couple of weeks to spare. So I was able to graduate from each of the programs before I got to undergraduate pilot training. Being the only female in the class, I was very fortunate that my peers were very supportive, because we were all in this together. We were all trying to achieve the same thing, you know, go through the program, graduate, get our Air Force wings, and go on to be an Air Force pilot. So my favorite phase of undergraduate pilot training was in the advanced phase of the T-38. It was supersonic, it was a sleek airplane, and we knew it as the White Rocket. The aerobatics were fun, but the formation flying was my favorite thing. And I excelled in this phase of the program. And I still encountered, you know, instructors who were trying to derail me and not let me progress. But I also found instructors who were very supportive. Like I said, I'd ask for help if I needed it. So, and coming up to graduation, I had to think about what I wanted to do. I had to pick my aircraft that I was going to fly in the Air Force. We get to select. There's the aircraft inventory for the Air Force, and you know, if you're one of the top graduates, then you get to select what's available. And for me, the fastest aircraft women could fly at the time was the T-38. It was supersonic, there was an ejection seat there, and being an instructor meant that I would not get deployed. I would be at home. Now my daughter was 4.5, going on 5 years old. And I wanted to be home for her, but still wanted to be able to fly in the Air Force. So I selected that, and I graduated in the top 5% of my class. So being selected to come back as an instructor, I needed a fighter aircraft qualification. Even though women weren't allowed to fly fighters at the time or go to combat, you still needed that designation. So I was fighter qualified in order to fly that T-38. It wasn't until 13 years later that Congress allowed women to fly fighters. So by that time I was already, you know, past that point. But that was the fastest jet that I could fly, and being able to get selected to come back as an instructor was a great thing. And it also taught me how to be a better pilot, because if you can teach it, it just makes you a better pilot. And I was among the first T-38 instructors for the Air Force, female T-38 instructors, the first one at Laughlin Air Force Base, female T-38 instructors. And so it would be almost 2 years and 6 training program courses after my initial oath when I finally got my first student pilots. Because after pilot training, you have to go to pilot instructor training, then you have to go to land survival training and water survival training, and then finally get back to your students. So my first students, and I want to share this with you, my very first students who were on the other side of the table, they would look at me. You know, I was female, a brand new graduate, and anything I taught them, they would question it. And they would, you know, I'd say, okay, this is how we're going to do a loop, or this is how the maneuver we're going to do. We're going to do a barrel roll. And they'd look at me and say, are you sure? They'd question what I was telling them. But I had that EQ, that emotional intelligence, because I knew I put myself in their shoes. And I would go to the books and I'll put them out and I go, see what it says here? This is exactly what I'm telling you. And after a week or so, didn't have to pull the book out again. They accepted the fact that I was their instructor and what I was teaching them was exactly what they needed to learn. And when they graduated, they thanked me for getting them through the program. So, you know, those first few weeks were always challenging with new students. And because of that, I became a great instructor because I knew how to work with students. They would send the weaker students to me and I would try and get them through the program. So I spent 8 years in the active duty Air Force. And having been an instructor at the undergraduate pilot training, I also was selected to go to become an instructor at the pilot instructor training. So I would teach pilots to become instructors. And I was also the first female in that squadron. So there were a lot of firsts that I did, and it wasn't that I was trying to be first. It's just how it happened, you know. And I found my mentors who supported me and recommended me. And I worked hard, you know. For women, sometimes it's 150, 200% to just be noticed when men could just do 90% or so. And, you know, they're already there. They're like, okay, you're qualified. So we had to overprove ourselves to the Air Force so they could even consider us. And I was very fortunate. I worked hard and I loved what I did. So that helps, you know. But now it was time for me to see, okay, I've got 8 years now, what's next? And when I got to pilot instructor training at the beginning, after I graduated, a friend that went to another pilot training course at another base told me that she was going to go get her commercial pilot's license, because once we graduate pilot training in the Air Force, you're qualified to go take the test. And it wasn't something I had considered at all, going to fly for the airlines. But she did, and I said, well, okay. So she invited me over, we had dinner, and I sat down. We went over all the airman regulations that we needed in addition to what we already knew in order to take the test. And the very next day we went to take the test, and I had this pilot's license in my back pocket. And that came into consideration when I knew that I would have to select another aircraft to fly for the Air Force. But this time we'd have to move. I would have to fly a cargo airplane, a 135, which is a flying gas station in the sky, or a 141, which we airlift cargo for the Air Force all around the world. And I would have to be deployed and away from my family for months on end. So a lot of my peers were leaving the Air Force, and I decided that I was going to go help my husband and my kids stay in one place and go to the commercial airlines and consider that. But I applied around, but in order to apply, I needed to get a flight engineer's license. So I had to study for that, which I did by myself, went to the test, and I got my flight engineer license. And I went to American Airlines, and the very first airplane I flew was as a flight engineer on a Boeing 727. And it was quite challenging, but quite rewarding at the same time, you know, being the only female around, even at American Airlines. When I started pilot training, 0.1% of women were pilots. At American, that's 8 years later, out of 5,000 pilots, there were only about 28 female pilots for American Airlines. So we were still a small percentage, you know. But seeing how I managed through this male-dominated profession, I pretty much think it's how you project and see yourself that will help others see you. Because, you know, what you think of yourself kind of shows. So if you feel that you know where you are and what you're doing and project that confidence, others will see you that way. At American, since there was very few women, even the employees didn't know they had female pilots, you know. And sometimes when I would do the first flight of the day on an aircraft, I would not only have to inspect the aircraft on the outside, I would have to inspect the cabin on the inside. And sometimes they'd let the passengers come on board before we even were able to go up and start our checklist in the cockpit. And one of the passengers on one occasion came up and says, "Oh, miss, can I get a pillow?" That's when we still had pillows and blankets. And I turn around and very politely say, "Oh, sure, let me get the flight attendant for you so she can help you, or he could help you get that." And they look at me like, "Why aren't you helping me?" But they didn't understand that I was a pilot, you know. So there were situations that I found that you have to take the time to try and educate people if they're willing to listen, you know. This is who I am, this is what I do. If they're not willing to listen, then just walk away. Because like I said before, it's their personal problem, not yours. But you know, you can take the time to educate them. When I upgraded to captain, I would do my best to try and welcome the people aboard my aircraft. And there was one situation where a passenger came up and said, "Oh, you're the captain." And I said, "Yes, I am." And they're puzzled, and I said, "Is there a problem?" And they're like, "Well," I said, "if you're not comfortable with me being the captain of this aircraft, you can walk out, ask the gate agent to book you on the next flight. You don't have to come on this flight." And they would quickly say, "Oh, no problem," keep walking to the back. So, but you know, I mean, you just give them the option, you know. The situation, it is what it is. So, but I had a great career at American Airlines. I stayed in the Air Force Reserves because I worked so hard. It took me 10 years from the age of 16 to 26 to actually start and do what I actually wanted to do, which was join the Air Force and serve my country. And, you know, that denial was just my delay in order to get the best job I could in the Air Force and serve. So when I gave up my active duty to go to American, I stayed in the reserves, and I was able to do 24 years and retire from the Air Force. And then at American, I put in 20 years. And I flew the 727, the F-100, the 757, and the 67. And I flew it domestically, internationally. I went to Central America, the Caribbean, South America, and Europe, and Canada, and Mexico. And it was a great career. And I was able to visit places that I had visited before and others where I didn't. And something I forgot to share with you is when I said that we lived in places that tourists would usually not go to. we lived in Taiwan, non-communist China at the time, and I also lived in Iran in the Middle East. So those cultures, so different to ours, you know, really taught me to see the world differently and respect what every country and every culture that's out there, because we have our own, you know, and my heritage being Hispanic, I'm very proud of who I am and what I represent. So if anybody asks, you know, what's your heritage? I tell them, I said, I was born in Puerto Rico and raised around the world. I'm a US citizen, but also consider myself a world citizen because, you know, there's so many countries out there that some people can begin to criticize very quickly without getting to know them. You know, you don't have to believe what they believe, but respect is everything. So, but I was following my dream, and even though I knocked on a door and I had to open a window to get in, becoming first was not a priority. You know, the first Latina in military or commercial, which happens to be my legacy. But I didn't even find out about being first until I was already past that point. In the military, I had a female student who graduated from the Air Force Academy coming through pilot training. She told me, oh, I'm going to be the first Latina military pilot. And I looked at her and I said, I'm very sorry to tell you, but I think you're looking at her. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a first. What's that? You know? And when I got to American, I had another female pilot come on board to do an orientation flight. I was already flying the line. I've been with the company a couple of months or so. And she came up to me and she said, oh, I'm going to be the first Latina pilot for American Airlines. And again, my same line. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're looking at her. So that's pretty much, you know, how I came to realize that I was the first, you know, and then verified it through channels and stuff. But my priority and my passion was to serve my country and to be in a profession that I was proud of. And I got to use my math in aviation. But my mission right now is to be a mentor, a role model, and an inspiration for anyone, female or male, to let them know that they can achieve their dreams, you know, and especially for women and other minorities. You know, the key is to persevere, overcome, adapt, and be true to what you're trying to achieve with humility and with passion. I want to say that my family and my faith are the true anchors for me, achieving what I did. You know, failure was not an option, even though sometimes, you know, where failure happens, lessons are learned and something bigger and better comes out of it. But I want to leave you with my final and personal words of wisdom, if you will. And it's my personal mantra. And those of you that are taking Spanish and know Spanish might understand this better. But it is querer es poder. My first translation was where there's a will, there's a way. But poder in Spanish means a couple of things. So I've translated now, which I think it's much better, is where there's a will, there's power. So if you have to want something so bad that you're actually going to make it happen. You know, you have to show up because nobody else is going to do it for you. You've got so much information at your fingertips, and your education is key, and it plays an important part in helping you move forward. It also provides a huge network and for you to find out more about where you would like to be. So as you continue your studies, your work, and you pass through your challenges and overcome any barriers, it will lead you to where you will find your place and hopefully fulfill a dream and your purpose. Porque querer es poder. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Olga. I really appreciate that you helped us But yeah, we're gonna open up the floor now for questions. Please, if you have questions, either raise your hand in here or like ask them, go ahead and ask them. If you don't want to say them out loud, then you can message them to me or to Sabrina, and we'll gladly relay your message to Olga.
So I have a question for you, Olga.
Yes.
Well, first off, thank you so much. My goodness, eres una inspiración. I'm so glad that you could come today, and I think you're amazing, and thank you so much for your service to the country and for your father as well. That's just such an amazing story. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. So one of the challenges that, not just Michigan, but our country is facing is the fear of what is different. Right. And on our campus, we are actively working to bring more diversity and global awareness by incorporating things like study abroad. So we actually already take students to Puerto Rico. So that was really exciting to hear. We do cultural fairs, things like that. However, it's a real challenge to get students, community members, even faculty sometimes, to understand the importance of global awareness or having a global perspective. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, maybe without even realizing it, but do you feel that global awareness has contributed to your success in any way? And, if yes, how so? It's something that I really want to, I want everybody to see how important it is. And, you're just such a shining example of that.
Yes, I truly feel it is, because if you do not leave your community, this is all you know. And you need to step outside that comfort zone and that circle in order to experience the world. And there's so much world out there. Everybody's different, But like I said, we all feel the same. We feel happy, we feel sad, we have our concerns. Everybody, I'm a Christian, but there's different religions out there. And as a Christian, this is my belief, and I don't push that or who I am or what I do on anybody. And that's the part of respect that I learned. I learned that, every country is different, every culture is different. And if you see it and experience it, you don't have to live it and accept it and change. You can just see it and respect it. And I think the respect is the biggest thing that people need to learn about, is respect. Just because you respect somebody doesn't mean that you believe what they believe or like it or anything, but it's a mutual respect. Even between two people, you can agree to disagree and move on. So that's how I see that experience outside of your immediate circle, and how people need to go and experience the world. But, we're not all fortunate to live in different places or travel that much, but even just leaving the state is a big deal, I think, So, but that's my perspective on that.
I like that. Thank you. I love that, global awareness does. You're right. It does ultimately boil down to respect. I really like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a question for the students. First of all, if they could chat down, write in their chat, what they're studying. And the other question I have, if they are the first generation to go to college. I just want to have an idea.
Do you think, can we just say it?
Yeah, no, you can say it. Absolutely.
Okay, well, first thing, we just want to say thank you so much for that story. It really inspired us as athletes. We're on the volleyball team, so we really appreciated that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My daughter was a volleyball player in high school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. She was great. She was co-captain, and she had the meanest serve ever.
As for me, I'm just doing general studies here at Mott, and then I'm going to get my bachelor's in business, and I'm also do the esthetician program, and I am first generation in my family.
Okay, excellent.
I am studying general studies here as well, and then getting my bachelor's in business management, and I am not the first generation to go to college.
Okay, well, good.
And I am studying business right now, and I'm gonna get my associates, and I'm not the first generation to go to college.
Oh gosh.
Great. Wow, the whole team's there, huh?
I don't really know what I want to do, but I love math and science, so something in that field. And yeah, I'm not the first generation. So.
Okay, math and science. Let me go back to, what was your name?
Emily.
Math and science? Huh? I can't hear you.
Oh, Emily.
Emily.
Yeah.
So let me just throw this out there. Consider, did you watch Dragon go up into space and dock with the space station?
I do not.
You did not. Okay. Well, it's something you can look up the NASA channel. I'm a big space person. I mean, my next life, I think I'm coming back as I'm going out to space and going up as an astronaut. I just love that. Love it, love it. And there's so many new horizons out there that, you know, I mean, you could be an engineer, you can design, you can do so many things. And don't forget, and this is for all of you ladies there that just spoke with me, is that in aviation and aerospace, there's so many different professions that are still in those fields, but you can do what you're going to study. So you can still, if that's something you like, you can still be involved with that. So, but I'm a STEM advocate, so that's why I had to jump in there. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Very good. Let me see. I'm going to check the chats here. Anthropology. Wow. Pre-law. Cybersecurity. That's huge. That is huge right now. Let's see. Who else? Science, psychology. Yeah. Very good. These are all great degrees, great professions to get in. Nursing. Yeah, I didn't do medicine because, first of all, I see blood and faint. Second of all, I'm afraid of needles, so that wasn't me. But anywhere else? No. Very good. Medical school. Well, great. Well, I wish you all the best, you know, and good luck in your studies and progression. And remember, there isn't a stupid question out there, and ask for help and find your mentors. Find your mentors, because they're not going to come up to you and say, hey, let me help you. So ask. Just ask.
Thank you so much. Seriously, I can't tell you, on behalf of Ma and all the students here, we're so thankful that we got to sit down and have this time for you.
Absolutely.
I have one question for you,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, real quick. So
No.
out of all the branches that you could have gone into, why the Air Force? Just curious.
Okay, because the Air Force was the other military branch that my father interacted with. So I was able to see the difference between the Air Force and the Army. And I just, you know how they say the grass is greener on the other side? But this one's for real, because the Air Force, as far as military branch, is very, there's a word, I can't find it, but you know, we kind of take care of the majority of the stuff and support all the other branches. So, you know, the military, the Army's on the ground, the Marines are on the ground, the Navy does the seas, which we don't do. And then the Coast Guard kind of protects our boundaries, you know, with land and water, and keeps our boundaries safe. So my second choice after experiencing the Air Force would be going to the Coast Guard, because I think that's pretty neat, you know. So, but that's why I chose the Air Force.
Thank you. Real quick before Olga goes, does anyone else have any other questions? All right. Well, Olga, again, thank you so much. We're so happy that we got to meet you and talk to you.
Absolutely, my pleasure, my honor. Bye-bye to everyone and all the best. And I appreciate the opportunity. Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.